Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Leanne Hughes. I invited today's guest on because I love sport. I love playing it. I love watching it. I am in complete admiration of high-performing athletes and teams who show up, work hard, have a strong mental game, and pull off impossible feats. And my guest today helps them do that. His name is Dr. Fergus Connolly, and he is a coach, teacher, mentor, author, speaker, and student of success and resilience. He's worked with some of the world's leading sports, military, and business teams, including the Australian cricket team, the San Francisco 49ers, the University of Michigan, Liverpool FC, and multiple special forces units. Dr. Fergus Connolly is one of the world's foremost human potential thought leaders and influencers. He's also the author of the best-selling book Game Changer, The Art of Sports Science. On this episode, we talk about Fergus's work with high-performing teams, how he builds trust and rapport quickly when he's come in to help, what he's thinking and feeling when he starts working with these amazing athletes, and the common challenges that he notices amongst sporting teams as well as business teams. We also talk get into a really deep dive about authenticity and purpose. And he shares 3 questions that really can help you figure out what it takes to be content and passionate about in what you do every day. Of course, this is a podcast about facilitation, so he also shares how he prepares for upcoming workshops and speaking engagements as well. But there really is a focus on purpose. I loved being part of this conversation and listening to Fergus share all of his experiences and how we can really hold that mirror up and answer questions that help us gain clarity to move forward. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
We lined up this interview only a couple of weeks ago, and how times have changed. How are you going through these times?
I'm pretty good, actually. And that sounds bad because I think there are a lot of people struggling, and there are a lot of people, I'll be really honest, it's not something that has thrown me. I think I'm used to change, look for change quite a lot as well, and thrive under it if I'm really honest. So this is just I think we touched on it earlier, this is a problem to solve, and I get excited by trying to find clarity in chaotic times like this, come up with a model, come up with a system, solve it, and help others. So I'm not saying I'm enjoying it, but these are the moments I think that competitors look for. I think, people who are competitive in nature enjoy it to some degree.
I said the same thing on
finding solutions.
Yeah, I mean, I said the same thing on a podcast yesterday. I had a couple of facilitators on, and I said, look, out of 10, I feel about an 8. I know that's maybe I don't have a lack of empathy. I think I do. Do have empathy for people that are going through all these times, but me personally, I think I'm looking at opportunities and looking as a great time to record podcast interviews with people like you.
Yeah.
So before we get into all of this detail, can you please share with our listeners a bit about your story, what you do now, and what career pivots got you here?
Yeah, and let's go back to the empathy thing, because that's a really interesting area as well. So I started, my career actually originally was in teaching and woodwork teaching and construction studies teaching. And my father was a teacher. That's what I decided I wanted to do, all because I wanted to play Gaelic football, which is the actual origin of Australian rules. I just want to get that in there and say Australian rules footy is the second greatest sport in the world after Gaelic football. And we're so delighted that we allowed you copy, although you screwed it up with the ball and everything. But honestly, that's what I wanted to do. I grew up playing football at home and wanted to do that, and I thought teaching was a great way to work from 9 to 4, have 3 months of the summer off, and then I would coach kids. But I went to university very early. I had my degree done when I was 21. I stayed on, did a master's in manufacturing, actually, did a PhD in computer-based optimization. But all the time, I enjoyed sport, I enjoyed learning, sports science, but I never saw a career in sport. So then later on, when I would save some money and have some vacation time, I'd go and visit coaches. I would go all around the world. And one of the first coaches who was so kind to bring me in was an Australian, actually, who was the strength coach at the time for the All Blacks, a guy called Ashley Jones, whose great-grandfather actually came from the village next to where I grew up.
Wow.
It's a really small world. And there were some great Australian coaches, Glenn Stewart and people like that, who were really helpful in me, because I was looking to other sports to learn. And so that started me on a career visiting coaches all around the world. And then after one visit with the Premier League soccer team, Bolton Wanderers, they said, look, we've had some changes here. They called me a few weeks later and said, look, we've had a lot of people come through, but we've not met anyone maybe who's as passionate or as interested and maybe as knowledgeable, because there wasn't a lot of sports science at the time. And that's how I got my start in professional sport in my mid-20s. And from there, then ended up working in rugby with Wales, consulted for soccer teams like Liverpool, worked as performance director at San Francisco 49ers, University of Michigan. Been fortunate to do some work then for, special forces groups as well. And I've had plenty of trips to Australia as well, to many of your great clubs and great sporting organizations. And my last trip down there was to speak to Cricket Australia.
You're responsible for the turnaround. I thought it was Justin Langer.
Absolutely not. I knew nothing about cricket, which was incredibly challenging, but it was very humbling that, I was in a room with guys like Greg Chappell, like legends of the sport, who I didn't even know, but they were so humble and so keen to learn that they wanted to bring people like me in who had differing ideas, different perspectives, to share some ideas that may be of help to them. And that was really humbling. It was a great honor to, particularly when you get asked by people who have been at the top of the game, who have such experience, to come and share ideas, to me, it's an honor. I don't see it any other way.
Do you get intimidated by that? The fact that these really high performing teams, they've done a lot of really great things, they've got a great track record. Do you feel then that you've really got to give them value when they invite you over? Is there any pressure on yourself to do that?
No, because I don't view it as me coming in telling somebody this is what you should do. Mm-hmm. What I enjoy the most is solving a problem with them. So them explaining, look, this is something that we're struggling with. And I never have an actual solution per se. I never view it like that. What I do have are things that I have done that have worked for me. Mm-hmm. I've got other perspectives from other sports. And the way that I always present it is, look, this is what I've done. And do you think this can work for you? And the solution is always in the middle. You know this as well. You facilitate. So I always get scared of people who come in and say, this is the way you got to do it. It's never right. Context is always king. So there are never two situations that are exactly the same. The solution might be 90% similar, but you have to respect two things. You have to respect the actual problem, and you have to respect the experience and the expertise of the expert that you're trying to help solve the problem with them. Otherwise, it's just hubris. You're going to get caught out.
Do you find that working with teams all around the world, different cultures, some high performing, some not so great at the moment, do you find that there are some common themes? It might not be the same exact problem because of the context, but do you find that there's certain elements? For example, in business, I always hear the one word, communication. That's the problem. It's so broad. What common themes would you find if you were sort of to look at these teams overall?
You're right. There are always key themes that are very often the common themes, and communication is one. I give a talk one time in Boston. After an hour-long presentation, somebody in it happens from time to time. Some guy puts his hand up and goes, "Okay. If there's only one thing that you could improve, what would it be?" It's always communication. Generally, okay, it starts with that, and then there are a few other themes as well, about leadership management and things like that are very often common. Secondarily to that, then throughout the phases, economically and in terms of social development, there are different things then that have become more common. So a while ago, it was about, managing data, managing information, which is still tied to communication overall, but it trends differently. I think now you see, just before this last, international dilemma, a lot of it was around social impact and employees, talent management. More and more of the current generations seem to be more interested in purpose and having a social impact, a legacy, things like that. So that's something that's become more common. I think helping with career development and the fact that more and more people are going to change career is something that has been a more common trend recently. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Communication is always one of the ones that are there. And then just as society changes, you start to see trends. And then you touched on it culturally. There are always cultural nuances. And I guess I don't notice it as much because from a very early age, like I said, I was traveling to learn from different cultures. And so I just became really, really aware of understanding people's fears and needs as I look at them. culturally, what are people fearful of, perhaps subconsciously? What are their primary desires? And it changes from culture to culture, from environment to environment, from country to country, you know. So yeah, those are all the things you have to consider.
I know, and that's what keeps us employed, I guess. The fact that there's so many different challenges and opportunities as well. Now, you
That's
brought
what
up,
makes it exciting.
I agree, because can you imagine running the same workshop and having the same conversations? That would kill me. Absolutely.
You know, and it's a challenge. Like, I mean, you have to go in, you have to present an idea or a concept, or maybe you're trying to present a challenging idea to somebody. And so how do you present that idea so they hear and see what it is you're trying to discuss or get across to them, but perhaps it's not in a threatening way, or perhaps you want to empower them. And so depending on who they are, their experience, the situation, all of those things are, you know, really important factors to consider. And yeah, that's what makes it exciting.
Yeah. So what are some ways that you adapt your style when you are working with different people and you're trying to influence them with a challenging idea? What are some things that you've done in the past?
So I grew up in Ireland. I grew up along the border as well during the Troubles. So it was a really interesting time. And one of the positives were that you were always, I guess, very aware of other people and very aware of their demeanor, very aware of who they were, very considerate, I guess. It obviously started from a safety perspective, but you're just more aware of people. So I've been fortunate to be a little bit more aware of how people are reacting to information and maybe picking up clues subconsciously that I'm not aware of. So you become aware of, when you start to suggest something, how people are maybe feeling intimidated, insecure, threatened, or, you know, so you pick up small signals, which might be in their eyes, it could be in the delay of a response. And that's one of the reasons that I tend to ask a lot of questions along the lines of, you know, how do you think this would work? Or have you guys tried something like this? Or, you know, what are the things that work? And the questioning is less direct, it's less threatening. You get a better response. You see which questions people answer quicker and move towards, which ones, you know, there's a silence, all of those kinds of things. And that's the softest way to start to suggest things to people. Or again, if you're really not sure, you know, you start to present situations where you tried things that didn't work. So if it's perhaps somebody who is more, what's the polite word? I'm trying to think of a polite word for a narcissist. But somebody who doesn't want to be threatened, that's an easier way to start to suggest ideas. And so you're not suggesting this is what you should do. This is something I've tried. Actually, I made a mess of this. Didn't work, but I don't know, would this work for you? Those kind of approaches. But again, I think you have to do that anyway, because you're trying to solve a problem with someone.
Yeah.
You're not going in, it's very rare you come in and say, oh, let me open up my briefcase. I got this. I got the solution. Sit back, watch. This is done. It doesn't work like that.
I wish we had someone do that for the current situation. Just like bring in the suitcase and go, I'm going to sort all this out. You'll be out in 2 weeks. Everything will go back to normal. The economy will be fine. You mentioned the kind word for narcissist. We didn't really figure that out. You work with sporting teams. You've worked with some very successful teams. And there are some egos, I'd imagine, in these teams. Or am I wrong?
No, there are egos, and it's really interesting as well, the different groups of teams. And I worked with or speaking with an Olympic team or group recently, and there are three different levels. I look at, there are four really, but the three main ones are, you've got this base level of team organization, and they're usually at the bottom. They need to turn around. And the key things there are discipline, structure, and somebody can come in and run that hard. And that's where somebody can come in very authoritarian and dictatorial and say, okay, we're going to do this. This is what we got to do. And that's fine. You'll get a company up and running, but it's not really sustainable long term, or it's limited. The next level up is one that has, you know, really intelligent system. It's still disciplined, very well organized, but is a little bit more nuanced in terms of how it's tackling the challenge, the problem, the production, whatever it is. But the third level is that that's which adaptable, and it's very much based on principles, and it's constantly evolving and adapting over time. And each of those different groups have managerial leadership styles that particularly suit them. But at the highest level, there has to be a certain amount of humility, because in order to adapt, you essentially are waking up every morning saying, I'm not 100% right. I can get better. What I'm doing is good, but I can constantly keep getting better. And that's one of the traits of that third level, that third tier.
And it sounds like with the current situation, we sort of all want to channel that type of mindset. And I think we are all waking up every day thinking, I mean, none of us are certain about anything. Before the call, you said that this is your time, like you love challenges and adapting. Did I paraphrase that? Am I correct?
Well, if you take that model though, any organization, any problem, any challenge has to go through those stages. Now, the length of the stage is different. So somebody, for example, and I wrote an article on LinkedIn recently about leadership in crisis. At this point in time, somebody, or different organizations or governments, or if there was a crisis, you need to clarify what the problem is. You need to put a system in place and let's start moving forward straight away. As soon as that's established, then it's a case of, okay, let's continue to develop. Let's get to that second level where we're starting to solve it. And then eventually, as we get to that, now we're constantly problem solving. We've got momentum and we're constantly evolving the solution. So, it's just like taking over a sports team in this sense, in that you have a problem, but you have to go through those stages. And when you get to that top level, then it's about constantly evolving so the problem never repeats itself. At this stage, governments, organizations need really clear, disciplined direction and start moving, and then evolve to the next stage, okay, where we're starting to get better and better. But at this point in time, or, well, I guess people would say 3 months ago, should have been a really clear directive. This is what we have to do. This is why. Let's start moving and we can evolve over time.
Yeah, it sort of reminds me that sort of authoritative approach. Our Prime Minister, I don't know if you saw this, if it made any headlines over there, but he pretty much just got onto national television. He said, supermarket shoppers, just stop hoarding food, just stop it. And he was so clear. It was like he was talking to 4-year-old kids, but I feel like that's the approach he had to take at that moment in time because the soft messaging just wasn't working.
No, I did. I saw it. And I also what really impressed me as well was the manner in which he spoke. He referred to his family as well, which, about the situation, that from a personal perspective, what I really respected about him was his authenticity. Like, he was authentic in terms of, okay, this is a situation. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, because people aren't naive anymore. That,
No.
it's not like we're not talking about Goebbels in the 30s. You can't smokescreen people. They're going to find alternative facts, to use a US term. But yeah, you need clear direction, and you need to explain the why to a certain level. You need to go into a lot of detail, but this is why we're doing it, and bring people on board.
And direction sometimes is also linked to purpose. And I'm sort of just going to segue this conversation into just a conversation around purpose, particularly with athletes and sporting teams. A lot of the seasons we've seen have been cancelled. A lot of people working in corporate, their jobs are on the line. What I also notice, and I do it as well, a lot of my purpose is linked to what I do, my job role. And when that's gone, then you're like, well, who am I? And I think it's something that you talked about legacy with athletes as well. When they retire, you see things like, mental health problems and things like that. So a couple of questions on that. Is it okay to link your purpose to what you do? And if not, how do we avoid it? How do we get a purpose that is outside of the things that we do every day? I mean, our whole identity is centered around these things.
I spoke in London about this 2 weeks ago. Actually, I was lucky to get back when I did. But this is arguably one of the greatest underlying challenges to everybody today in society, because, and I was first brought to, I guess, the severity, and particularly in the military and special operations in groups, people transitioning out of the military, with players who struggle with transitioning, retiring, with people in Silicon Valley who reach a certain income level or a certain bank balance. And the question eventually comes around to, what do I do? There are 3 questions, and this is getting a little bit deep, but there are 3 questions fundamentally everybody should be able to answer to some degree. The first one is, if you meet anyone on a bus, or, well, you're not going to be meeting people publicly now, but if you are,
on Zoom calls,
and you were to say to someone, hey, who are you? The answer is really interesting, because somebody would say, oh, I'm a doctor, I'm a whatever.
Yeah. And
then you ask them, okay, so what do you do? They just told you what they did. They didn't tell you who they were. So the 3 questions are, what do you do? Who are you? And why are you here? So what you do is your profession. Who you are is, in terms of your strengths and weaknesses, that's your identity. So one is your profession, the other is your personal. And the third one then is, why are you here? What is your purpose? And so I look at it as 3 overlapping spheres or circles. On one hand, you've got professional, on the other, you've got personal, and the third is purposeful. And so let's say you take somebody who retires from professional sport. Their professional sphere is momentarily taken away because that's what they did, so that's gone. Now, if they don't know truly who they are, or they identify themselves as just a football player, and if their only purpose was to win flags, now that three-legged stool is really, really rocky. And a really useless piece of information for you is the most stable stool in the world is a three-legged stool, not a four-legged stool. Three-legged stool can find a stable position. Four legs can't actually. So those three legs are critical.
That is interesting. That's not useless at all. Thank you.
Useless. So those are three questions, like what do you do, who am I, and why am I here? A lot of people, in professional sport, and one of the challenges you see more and more today is that we have kids who are going into a system, into an academy system, or whatever it is, into a sporting system, and they start to identify younger and younger as a player, as an athlete, whatever. But if they get a sudden injury and they're out, now that identity that they have attached to their profession or their potential profession or their career, now they struggle. You see it in the military time and time again. You see it with certain business people who reach a certain point and feel unfulfilled. The real purpose, and this is what I work with a lot of people on, is finding the themes, the common themes between who they are as a person. So if you truly know who you are and what you are good at, and you find a career that you are good at, now going to work is easy. Now you're content going to work.
Yeah.
If you find a career that aligns with your purpose, what you believe to be important in life, now you go to work content and passionate. And this is where you find, that's where that overlapping, when those three circles overlap properly, you know what your purpose is, you know what you're going to work to do, you know what you're good at. Now you can find that level of contentment. I'm not saying it's pure bliss all the time, it's not. But you know why you get up in the morning every day. So coming back to the situation we're in at this point in time, people who have only identified themselves as their job, now they're struggling. And people who don't know really what their greater purpose is, they can't find something to do to fulfill that purpose, to give themselves contentment. And that's where a lot of people at this moment in time are a little bit unhappy.
I think so. I've even had just a message from a friend that was made redundant, and she said just her confidence has dropped. It felt like someone just chopped her finger off. I was like, wow, that's pretty strong. So in situations like that, I mean, what are some things that we can do to discover our purpose? Because there's a lot of, I guess, introspection in that, and we've probably got a bit of time to do that now.
Yeah.
And how can your purpose evolve, or is it something that is intrinsic?
So your purpose generally comes from what your values are, like what you value in life, what's important to you, and then how you can manifest, or how you can, and generally it's greater than you. There are lots of different questions you can ask. Like, when do you cry? Like, at what moments do you cry, or have you cried? Like, sometimes with men, that's, or what are the things that you're most passionate about? If you had, what you do have now, if you had a week off now and you couldn't work, and there was nobody else around, what would you go and do if money wasn't a problem? Like, what would fulfill you? And that's where that idea of a purposeful life comes from. But even beyond that, a lot of people truly don't know, and this is one of the challenges with young athletes coming through and young kids, their image is generally associated with what they do, but their identity is who they are. And many people, because we're so busy at work, we've never really held a good mirror up to ourselves to say, this is what we're actually good at. This is what I can develop. It could be health and wellness. It could be emotion. It could be how we learn. It could be spiritually, all of those things. So this is a great opportunity to, I call it, profile oneself, just as we would profile a player we're going to draft. But like, how do you, just to sit down and reflect on, okay, what am I good at? What am I not good at? And what can I improve to help me? Because at the core for me, it's about sustaining success. Your definition of success, everybody's is different. It could be to be a good husband, to be a good wife, to be a good son, whatever that success is. But you can only sustain it if those three legs are balanced, professionally, personally, and purposefully.
Yeah, you're so right. There's certain times just working in corporate, I'd sort of look around and I don't want to climb the ladder because I don't want their life. Then I was trying to sort of think about their life, and I can't really, we can talk about empathy soon, but I feel like there's also projections of what society says is success that we buy into. So it's like, you work hard, you climb the corporate ladder, that is success. And then some people wake up at the age of, 50 and think, what am I even doing?
Yeah, or some people, make it at 40 and they look around and go, my marriage is a mess. I've got kids who I don't really see that much. But again, that's not for me to judge. That's people, that's fine. But what I do with some of the people I work for is really about bringing awareness to that. So at the core of sustainable success is what I talk about, authentic awareness. That's at the core. And I can't do it for you, but I can help hold that mirror up and bring that mirror around for you. But you have to be authentic enough to find that awareness, and so that I can empower you and bring these ideas to you so that you can move forward and start to develop yourself. But you're so right. People get caught up in perceptions, expectations, social expectations, norms, whatever it might be. That's the world that we live in. But at this point in time, there are a lot of people who've had the rug pulled from under them, and they can only really fill out that one sphere, which is the professional one at this point in time.
So these conversations you have about purpose and all the elements that make up that three-legged stool, these are pretty deep conversations. And when you're contracted to a team, you might have to develop the rapport pretty quickly to get someone to open up. What are some ways that you build trust with either groups or individuals?
The most important thing, and it's the most expensive and difficult thing to do, is smile. So
that's easy.
People, honestly, it's building a rapport, smiling, and genuinely being interested in people before you even open your mouth. And building rapport with people is so important. And for me, it's about being honest, being authentic. This is what I'm good at. This is what I'm not. This is what I can do. This is what I can't. You can't build trust without being honest. You have to be honest. You don't necessarily have to be open, vulnerable and everything, but you do have to be straightforward with people, because you're not going to build any trust that's worthwhile. And if it's false or fake, it's not going to survive. It all starts with that. Sometimes it's brutal honesty, but it's an authenticity.
Yeah, thank you for talking about curiosity, because a lot of people ask me, how did you develop your interviewing skills? And it's like, I don't really work on that. I'm actually just genuinely curious and asking you the questions that I'd ask you any other time if we were having a conversation.
Yeah, so you have to be in a position where you're not solely focused on yourself, and you're obviously there for the other person. But I think there are lots of different traits that become, or attributes, I think, that are helpful. Being humble enough to know that, first of all, that you don't have all the solutions comes across easily. And you must have seen that as well, where you go into different organizations, and some organizations it's easier to build trust, or some people it's easier to build trust than others. And then can you build something that's sustainable?
Yeah, definitely different workshop contexts where you can feel in the first 10 minutes, everyone's just keen to get involved. Other ones, like after lunch, you think, finally got them. And it depends on the culture of the team, the status of the people in the room, how well they relate to you, whether they think that you're a threat or a friend, all of those elements. So I actually love the challenge. I love getting into a workshop where people are just sitting there with their arms crossed and they're not happy being there. I love that. It's like, I'm going to make sure that you enjoy this.
Yeah, you got to up your game,
which
you can slowly bring people around, or you start to see development in them, which is exciting as well.
That's right. So let's talk about, you said that you were in London a couple of weeks ago delivering a speech, and you travel around countries talking and facilitating. How do you prepare for those gigs and events?
Over the years, I've developed my own, solutions or philosophies, things that have worked for me. So what I've always tried to do is I've always had one foot in science and research and then applying it. That's always been the way. So these are things that have worked for me. This is the science. This is what has supported it. And I'm constantly evolving it. I'm constantly learning and developing the principles behind. Sorry, the principles stay the same. It's the actual presentation that will change depending on the audience. So was it 2 weeks ago, 10 days ago? It was a leadership summit. We had, the head of learning development for JP Morgan, head of HR for Amazon. And it was fascinating to get the opportunity to listen to them as well, and to see. And what was incredible about it was that each of the speakers essentially was talking about the same challenges, but from different perspectives and different experiences. And that was really, really interesting to hear. Selfishly, I learned so much from those events as well. And I really enjoy then getting feedback. One of the other speakers from Inside had He asked me a really, really interesting question. It stayed with me for 3 days. And it was to do with a graphic I'd used, where he challenged me that I could do it better. And he was so right, actually. And I messaged him like 5 days afterwards, and I said, I figured out actually how to present that concept better, because I use a lot of graphics to try and explain some concepts that are quite out there, because that's the only way to give people the essence of what it is that you're speaking about.
That's really good feedback. And also it's nice because sometimes when I go to speaking events, I'm so caught up in my own head of nailing the presentation, rehearsing it, that I can't be present sometimes to actually take in everything that's going on. Do you find that you've got to shift your focus to be more present, or have you just built this over the years?
I love it because I really enjoy speaking. And I'll give you another example. This is a few years ago, and I've never forgotten about this one. I gave a talk in Boston quite some time ago. It was received very, very well. It was one of the best I'd done. I did it a little bit differently as well. So anyway, as I was leaving, as we were walking out afterwards, everybody had spoken to it, come to say that really enjoyed it. But as I was walking back, there was a girl that was walking in the group. We were walking back to the hotel, and I said, look, please be critical. I want critical feedback, and I'm always demanding where I want to know, okay, how can I get better? I can always get better. And she said to me, no, it was really, really good. She said, there's only one thing. You never mentioned females or women at all in your presentation. Ooh. And it hit me so hard. And she was so polite, but she was so right. And it was such a glaring omission. And I fumbled a half apology to her saying, well, I haven't worked with women. But that in itself was part of the challenge. I hadn't worked with women. I'd never had any experience. So I wasn't aware of it. There were two things. One was just the fact of not having worked with women, but also it made me realize you don't know what you don't know. And that was a wonderful learning lesson for me. So those moments, just as things are cooling down, those are the best moments to get feedback from people. I'm so grateful. Like, I love that feedback, because I'm not right. Like, I'm presenting what I believe to be the best, and based on my experience in all those different sports organizations at this point in time, but I'm not right.
Yeah, I love those moments where your blind spots are sort of raised. It's like when you've got spinach in your teeth and no one tells you. It's like, can someone please just tell me? Yeah. And I hate it. There's nothing worse when you get to, like, you run a 2 or 3 day workshop and you get to the end and you get feedback. So I guess sometimes what I'm challenging myself to do more frequently is just asking for it during breaks and asking people to come up for specifics, so then I can pivot if required.
That's really good, because I reach out to people regularly for, if I see comments or something, I reach out to them, hey, listen, I just want you to be brutal. And not all feedback is valid, or not all feedback I'm going to change. Some of it, I explain afterwards why I had to do something, but I always want it,
Absolutely.
I always want feedback.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're regarded as being intimidating, which is something that from time to time happens. And I go, hang on a second, I'm trying to be, but yeah, you need feedback if you're going to get better.
Yeah, I guess if I got that statement intimidating, I would be so curious. Like, what is it that makes you feel that? Like, what projects that? Is it something? Is it the way I'm walking? Is it? I really sort of dig into it and ask some more questions. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Fergus, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners, people that are facilitating workshops or working with teams? Any sort of advice that you'd probably give yourself when you first started on this path?
I think awareness is underrated. I think something I've grown a lot more aware of myself, but and I think also sometimes we don't back ourselves enough, because we're always looking externally or from research or for someone else for a solution or direction, but we are not actually developing our own awareness and intuition ourselves, because we're doing that. We're not taking the time to reflect and be in the moment, and feedback is critical to that. So I always encourage young coaches who come to me looking for guidance. I will guide them and help them, but I'll also say, never underestimate the experience that you are teaching yourself through. Sometimes, you hop in a car or you rush away from something. There's huge learning moments for you there at that time, and do never take those for granted.
That's why I actually love being guests on other people's podcasts, because you just they ask you these questions and you say something, you thought, I never would have got that if the chance to reflect. Yeah, that's right.
I think as well, I love Australia. I love Australia, New Zealand. I really enjoy the perspective. I love the tall poppy syndrome. I love that. There's humility. Your feet will be kept on the ground. There's some wonderful thinkers, some great people that I've met. I've learned so much. So many Australian people have been so generous to me with their time in my career. And there's a certain ingenuity, I think, as well about Australian people and New Zealanders, but particularly Australian people, that I think maybe you don't give yourselves enough credit for at time. It must be just the Irish influence. But no, but I think, I think, yeah, like, I mean, I think there's a wonderful balance between I refer to it as the art and science that Australia keeps, I think, that's really, really important. And I've said this a few years ago as well. I think Australia is very fortunate because it can protect its society and the balance in society that perhaps some countries like the US just can't, in the sense that there's a better opportunity to look after the youth of the country by keeping that balance, keeping sport in its place, the economy in its place, keeping the things that are important actually important. And it's not about wealth, it's not about money, it's not about greed, it's about protecting the society and the future of the nation. So I think countries like Australia, Ireland, New Zealand, the UK to some extent, should never allow themselves to be influenced by other economies or other cultures.
That's a really interesting perspective. If you looked at my Facebook newsfeed and all my Australian friends, everyone is just bagging out the government. And I always say, look, I'm so grateful. I think we absolutely are the lucky country. I've travelled around a lot. I'm so grateful to be an Australian and to live here. But I think that's also what keeps it real, is the fact that we are brave enough just to really call things out at that level. But I think I'm absolutely grateful, and thank you for sharing that perspective on what it's like looking into this country.
Yeah, the grass is always greener, and no, I think as Australians, as bad as things might get from time to time, we have a lot to be grateful for.
Absolutely. Fergus, thank you so much for this conversation. We explored so many different topics. I don't know how you'd sort of wrap it up in a sentence, but I'm really grateful for the work that you do. It's really interesting hearing the parallels between sport and business and that word communication. I mean, that's just it, right? It's always communication.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So appreciate you hopping on the line and sharing that with our listeners. If I'd like to find out more about you and the work that you do, where should we send them?
Start my website, I guess, is the easiest. It's just fergusconnolly.com.
Awesome.